We use an app to kind of identify which voters we're going to talk to. And we're in a really critical moment right now because they get their ballots in 3 days.
So you're actually doing the old school knock on the door and talk to people, engage with people.
That's right, and they can hear us on the doorbell right now. Hi, Marisol and Jasmine. Do you have a quick minute to talk? I'm Representative Ortiz.
The best option is to go see. See what you don't know. Read what you don't know. I'm standing at the Maryvale Community Center. It is a neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona, a neighborhood that dates back to the 50s. Back then, it was a new neighborhood, and the city of Phoenix was expanding. So a lot of people, middle-class people, moved to Maryvale to buy their new homes, affordable new homes. Well, fast forward now to 2024, it's a little bit different. It is a community that is often ignored. It is a community that is often misunderstood. We read and see things about neighborhoods like this all across America, whether it be here in Phoenix or Chicago or San Francisco, areas that have different challenges than middle-class and upper-class neighborhoods. So I thought we'd bring the podcast Equal Matters to Maryvale to see it firsthand. Our friend Representative Analise Ortiz, now running for Arizona State Senate, is going out canvassing. We're going to tag along and see what we can see and what we can learn here in Maryvale. Thanks for being here. My name is Rob Hunter, former talk show host, now host of this podcast, Equal Matters, that encourages an equal dialogue. Let's get going. Cal the Guitar Hero, take us in.
Sunday evenings are usually great. Again, people are a little burned out, but
That is actually an interesting
this house.
issue of burnout. I just met with some people yesterday and I said, this is actually an opportunity for us to focus on, for example, your race, state Senate race.
Yeah,
Get to know
exactly.
our candidates that are running on our local level.
Yeah, these races are incredibly important. And unlike the presidential race, these are races that sometimes come down to a couple hundred votes.
Which is why doing this, knocking on doors, is incredibly important.
It makes a difference. Do you have a quick minute to talk? I'm your state representative, Analise Ortiz.
Has vodka.
Oh, okay. Where's mine?
What are you mixing with your vodka?
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
I'm a shot girl.
It's
Shot
one
girl.
of those. It's one of those days.
Yes.
See, I told you people offer us drinks.
Now I know why you do it.
Normally it's like a Gatorade or a coconut water. She asked if we wanted a shot of vodka.
Oh, really?
What do you typically converse about?
At this point, we have talked to some of these voters multiple times. So today, for those who we've already talked to, our most important message is making sure they know their ballot's coming on Wednesday. Hi, how are you? You remember me? I'm Representative Ortiz.
All right.
How have you been?
Holding on.
Holding on, good to hear. Well, yeah, I just stopped by to tell you that your ballot's coming on Wednesday.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Can I still count on your support?
Of course.
Thank you so much. All right, well, I hope you both have a beautiful evening.
Okay, thanks. And you
Okay.
take care too.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If they've never heard of us before, we ask them, what are issues in the community that you care about most? And it's typically a different answer every time. Here in Maryvale, overwhelmingly people are concerned about speeding in the neighborhoods, garbage in their alleys, just very day-to-day issues that are impacting their quality of life. Are there any questions you have about any of my policy positions?
No.
Okay.
Not right now. I've lived here since 1976.
Oh,
Really?
wow, okay.
Yeah, I was raised here.
Okay, so you've seen the neighborhood change a lot?
A lot.
Which do you like more, knocking on doors or fundraising?
Knocking on doors, 100%. I've been fighting for policies to make housing more affordable, and I helped create a new homeless services fund. Are there any other issues that...
The homeless is the main thing.
When you hear that people are concerned about homelessness, what does that typically mean?
It's mainly people that are concerned that in the richest country in the world, we have people living on the street.
This is one of those issues that seems to me many voters, regardless of party, would just rather it go away and not see it. But that doesn't mean it's not happening and not real and not need a solution.
That's right. And I think here in Maryvale, people recognize how when the zone closed, people were pushed west. And let's talk about why we don't have access to drug treatment.
Why do we not have access to drug treatment?
Well, Arizona chooses not to invest in it. Our state would much rather put people in prison for being addicted to substances than help them treat that substance use disorder.
And there are plenty of options for treatment.
And if you happen to be from a wealthier family who can afford drug treatment, then you're very fortunate. But if you can't afford it, you end up in the streets, or in the worst situations, you lose your life. So we see more homelessness now, and our community understands that you can't just push people to other parts of town because that does not solve the issue.
Just masks it. Rep, how would you describe Maryvale, the neighborhood we're in now?
Our community here in Maryvale is a beautiful community, a lot of hardworking people, a lot of young families. This is an area that you can always find your neighbors barbecuing and offering you food. Neighbors look out for each other here, which is something I really love about Maryvale. And demographically, it is a majority Latino area.
But it didn't used to be.
It didn't used to be. Give me a second, this is the
Yeah.
next house. Con permiso. So every now and then I meet a voter who's lived here since the 50s or 60s when this community was first developed, and that's always really cool. Thank you.
I've lived here since 1976.
Oh,
Really?
wow, okay.
Yeah, I was raised here.
Okay, so you've seen the neighborhood change a lot?
A lot.
I saw an ad for a new home in Maryvale, a flashback ad on Facebook. It was meant for when Phoenix started to expand. This was one of the first neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of history here.
And the home we're standing at has this really amazingly carved wooden door that is super unique and super cool.
Check this out.
You have a knocking callus.
Yeah. Hi. So the other day, I knocked on the door of a older Latino monolingual Spanish speaker who was a strong supporter in 2022.
Well, that one?
Yep, that way. And he told me that the teachers in the schools are teaching boys to be girls and girls to be boys. And that was very clearly some misinformation he had heard from somewhere. So we had a conversation about it, and I talked to him about how that's not the truth. You could park about right here. And how trans people in our communities are worthy of dignity and respect and of non-discrimination. So I really do think it's these face-to-face conversations that make the difference to combating those things, because this is a man who I've talked to multiple times. There's a level of trust there. So when I'm able to inform him, hopefully it goes a long way. The conversation did end on a positive note, so I hope that it gave him something to think about.
When you have those tougher face-to-face conversations, Rep, how do you start off to build that trust?
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest things is to make people understand that I hear them. And you can never shame people, right? And sometimes people have views for very emotional reasons, like their religion or whatever it might be. So I think it's really important, like with the issue of abortion, for example, to say I completely understand why you might feel as though abortion is not a choice you would make, but would you agree that the government shouldn't be making decisions for our families? And usually people will say, yeah, I agree with that. And it gives us a level of respect for each other that we can then continue to have the conversation and go deeper into that philosophical question of what is the government's role in our private lives?
I had a similar conversation with some Trump voters the other day, that term respect. Because I said that many Trump voters feel that the DOJ going after the former president is an injustice. And I said, okay, I want to tell you about my progressive friends because they view injustices as well and they see them, but it's typically in communities that don't have the income to fight back.
Right. Hi, is Jeffrey home?
No, he's not home at the moment.
Oh, okay. Do you think you can give this to him? I'm Representative Ortiz.
Okay.
I just wanted him to know his ballot's coming in the mail. It'll be mailed on Wednesday. Thank you so much. Well, it was really good to talk to you, and I hope to earn your vote for state senator. Again, I'm Ortiz.
Okay.
Thank you. So go ahead.
So I brought up what I call the Fourth Amendment violations that happen in communities like this because the force can come in
Right.
and force somebody to defend themselves even if they're innocent, but the expense, maybe the fines and the fees that come along with that is the same injustice that you guys feel you're witnessing. So is there a question that we can have about how much power we want the Department of Justice to have, whether it's federally or whether it's our police departments? Because I think that universal agreement, Rep, is that we do have a little bit out of balance in many ways.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic, and it's something that I've been able to agree with some of the members of the Freedom Caucus about when it comes to how broken our criminal legal system is. Now, does that mean I defend Trump? Absolutely not. It does not. But we need to have a bipartisan conversation. Hi. Oh, the door just opened on its own. Hello? Is Bradley home? Hi, Bradley. But it makes all the difference to be able to have a face-to-face conversation with somebody. And to me, it's all about relationship building. Again, like many of these voters are people I've come to see 5 or 6 times. And every time they're very appreciative that I'm here on their doorstep. I also communicate with them throughout the year through other means, whether it's phone calls or letters. I think people aren't used to seeing that from politicians.
No doubt.
They're used to seeing, quips on Twitter. But that's not what people want when you really talk to them. They don't like that kind of childish bickering.
I'm glad you brought that up because one of the areas that I like the least is the tone. And you even, I don't remember exactly what the Republican Party is investigating you for, but it seemed to have to do with the way they put it was your tone. And this is the fight over the abortion issue. So in addressing the tone, how do you tell people in Maryvale, your constituents, that that's not really your game?
Let me tell you in 1 second.
Yeah, we'll answer the question.
Hola, buenos días. Buenas tardes, sí. Adriana, ¿está disponible? Feel up to walk around that corner there?
Yeah, totally fine.
It's not too hot?
No.
Okay. Let me tell her. It's funny you ask about that. Yeah. In the moment that I yelled on the House floor and interrupted Matt Gress's press conference, all I was thinking about was if we don't disrupt in this moment and let these Republicans know that business as usual cannot go on because the situation is so dire, then we lose the opportunity to potentially repeal this abortion ban. Mm-hmm. That was not behavior I would ever typically do, but the moment called for it. And very, very few of my constituents know that that happened, even though it was on the front page of the newspaper. But those who do know thanked me profusely.
Well, there's a balance, right, in, I want to say preserving a rebelliousness, but that's part of our American spirit. And doing it strategically, not constantly.
Exactly. There was strategy behind that. And hi, Wendy está disponible? Okay, ¿me hace un favor y dar esta información a ella? Yeah, there's a strategy to it. And I think ultimately people are really tired of seeing our country rapidly descend into fascism and people wanting to play nice. So it's a nuanced thing, right? Because I can sit down and talk to Republicans about housing policy and economic development policy. But when we talk about things that are fundamentally stripping us of our freedoms, it's a different story.
Absolutely.
It's a different ballgame. Marco and Josue, do you have a quick minute to talk? I'm Representative Ortiz. I represent you in the Arizona House of Representatives.
Do you find that many people pay attention to state government, or that when you knock on these doors, people don't?
I think that any legislator who thinks that people know them is full of themselves. Because absolutely not. People know their city council people. They know who represents them in the United States Congress. They very, very rarely know who their state legislator is, or what a state legislator actually does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's actually this house. You can park like right here. Okay. Are you drinking enough water?
Yep, got mine right there.
Okay.
Thank you for checking. And to go back to tone, as a talk show host, I've certainly added some emphasis in my voice over the years on issues that I care about. So I totally understand the passion.
Right.
And it's necessary to have it. I, like you, have learned over the years to be strategic about when doing that.
Right.
And then trying to converse on the other side to listen and potentially offer a different idea.
That's right. Hi, is Bonnie available? I'm Representative Ortiz.
This house we're standing at is painted in yellow. It has a white cat that just walked by, has an American-themed wreath on the door underneath a welcome sign. That wreath is made up of what look like roses, and beneath that there's a sign that says, "My children bark." Fantastic. There's a lot of misconceptions about this neighborhood, isn't there?
Yeah, gets a bad rap, and people are really frustrated by that, people who live here.
I am fascinated by the character of this neighborhood.
Yeah.
This is way blowing away my perceptions, right, of what we talked about before.
This home is beautiful. I love it.
It's very unique.
Hi, how are you? Good, how are you? Good. Are any of you registered to vote at this address? Okay, great. Yeah, I've been working on policies to try to make rent more affordable and combat the homelessness crisis. I also really care about protecting reproductive rights. Are there any other issues that you care about that you want me to know or that you have questions about?
Yeah, I have a child with special needs and I can't seem to find anything here that can satisfy that need of outdoors, and especially like here at Walmart, we don't have like, you know, like the proper seating for him. My son has cerebral palsy, he has HIE, yeah, he's epileptic, so he's just a lot of, you know, medical involvement.
Thank you so much for raising this. This is actually the second time I've had someone ask specifically for more playgrounds for children with disabilities, and the fact that you're bringing up that it's an issue everywhere, including the grocery store, is something that I really think there needs to be more attention to that, and it really makes me think as an elected official of how I could be doing a better job advocating for those resources for our community, so I really, really appreciate you sharing this with me. What's your son's name?
His name is Haciel, he's right there.
Hi, I'm Analise. He's so cute. How old is he?
He's 4.
I have contacts within the state agencies, so if there's ever anything that goes on that you need help with, let me know and I can try to elevate your concern.
Okay.
Now that seems to be another issue that is not talked about very often.
That's right, and definitely as an elected official, it's something that if you aren't expressing that to your elected official, they might never know. That's an area that I don't have lived experience with because I do not have a child with disabilities in the way this mother so intimately knows how it impacts every single aspect of her life. So now that she's expressing that to me, I can start to be more cognizant in the policies that I make to make sure that I'm advocating for all of my constituents.
Let's talk about going from state house to now running for state senate. What's the difference in the job as far as the way that you look at it?
Right there. Yeah, so the actual job of a senator itself is almost identical to the job of a representative. The only difference is that the senators vote on the director nominations for the various state agencies. It's also a smaller chamber, right? So there's only 30 members, whereas there's 60 members in the House. Before I made the decision to run for the open Senate seat, I reflected on it very heavily, and I talked to a lot of former members who've served in both chambers. And overwhelmingly, they told me that the Senate is a place where you can really put your head down and work and focus on getting good policy passed, whereas the House is a lot more dramatic and chaotic.
What is the complaint that some of the Republicans filed against you? Is it ethic related?
Well, they filed this ethics complaint because I said, shame on you on the House floor. Basically, I said, shame on you on the House floor when we were in a recess. And then one of the Republicans was having a press conference where I knew he was saying things that would make himself look good and that were not accurate about what was happening on the floor. And as a former journalist, I know that the media narrative is everything. So I was not going to give him that opportunity to craft his own media narrative that I knew was going to be untruthful. So I went and interrupted the press conference, and I made sure that the press knew, it's that house right there, that this particular Republican in question, who was trying to bill himself as the savior for women's rights, was someone who had sponsored fetal personhood legislation. A few Republicans said that my behavior was disorderly, which would violate the first rule of the state house. So there was a whole ethics committee hearing that I did not go to, and they ultimately determined that yes, I was guilty of disorderly behavior.
How is this committee made up? Mostly Republicans, because Republicans control the state house at the moment?
That's right.
Okay. So it's
In
partisan,
fact-
in other words.
In fact, just a few weeks later, a Republican was forced to withdraw from running for office because he had forged petition signatures, and there was an ethics complaint filed against him for violating a state law, and the Republican Ethics Committee decided to dismiss that complaint.
Really?
Yep.
So what does this mean for you going forward? Anything? Or is it just, it goes in your HR file?
Well, there was a potential that I was going to be censured by the full House, which is basically just a slap on the wrist. Ultimately, we did sine die, meaning the legislative session ended before that censure vote could ever happen. So at this point, it was all political theater for nothing.
The last time we hung out, we were in a park, and one of the ladies that I talked to said something that her home value went up so much that she now can't afford to pay her property taxes.
Yeah, it's awful. And when you talk about like the policies we're trying to make that would create more affordable housing, meaning more housing that we can afford.
As in lawmakers.
Turn right here. Yeah. We're talking about increasing our housing supply so that the prices of homes go down, and that would help with some of this property tax burden that people are facing.
A lot of challenges that you are stepping into.
To say the least. It's Representative Ortiz again. I just wanted to come tell you very quickly that your ballot's going to be coming, and I wanted to ask if you have any questions about my policy platform or about voting this year. Yeah, and sometimes it can feel really like heavy when you have people like that who say all politicians are the same. Hi. Or, you know, nobody cares about me. What makes you different than anyone else? It can feel heavy because it's like, yeah, ultimately I'm one of 90 legislators. I can't snap my fingers and change things overnight. All I can do is fight as hard as I can and be honest with people and explain my votes to them. And that's what I tell them.
You think that you represent a newer breed of representatives?
Yeah, it totally is a new way of doing things that personally I think has made me far more effective in the legislature.
So talk about that. Because you worked on a housing bill, you
That's
built
right.
a coalition. The first attempt was vetoed by the governor, which we talked about. So you guys were able to come back together and continue to work it through to build that coalition. So do you find this is the work,
and left there.
knocking on the doors, saying hi to people, that gives you the energy to continue to do that?
Yes, it definitely gives me the energy and the motivation to keep going. One of the coolest things that happened when it comes to housing was I had this guy who found me on TikTok, and he came out to be my driver and drive me around, just like Patricia's doing today. So this guy came out to drive me, and he said he had seen my TikToks about the casita bill, the bill that legalized casitas. And he told me that after he saw my TikTok, he was like, oh, these are legal now in Phoenix. I'm gonna go find out how to build one. And he was in the process of building one. And while he was driving me around that day, the blueprints came in on his email for his new casita. And he showed me the blueprints and everything. So it's those kind of things that's like, okay, yeah, we can make material change for people's lives.
And even going back to the mom who has the child with the special needs, the only way you know that is by seeing it.
Right. And one of the things that made me want to run for office was how out of touch some of the lawmakers are. For example, when I was still working at the ACLU on criminal justice reform, they were trying to get the Department of Corrections to allow them to have free tampons. And they went to testify at a Judiciary Committee hearing, and one of the male lawmakers said something like, you don't need that many tampons, or something like that, to a woman. So that's where I say there's so many people who don't talk to everyday people, and they don't understand what they're going through, and they think they know better, and they don't. None of our lawmakers, including myself, know better than the people who are experiencing these things every day.
The federal government, been studying it for 25 years, it just doesn't seem to bring very good results.
Oh, no.
And I think that is a common frustration, but I think that that keyword is common, whether you're liberal, progressive, Democrat, Republican, conservative, however we want to label ourselves. We kind of have that general agreement that
stop sign.
We can do better.
Right. Yeah, and I think people are really burned out by Congress and its multiple failures. And that's what I like about being able to educate people about the local government, is that we do have so much more of an impact on people's lives. Right here. And like when I had that man who was able to build a casita because I helped fight for the city of Phoenix to legalize them, that was really cool. That was one of those moments that it's like the government can work and it's worth it.
The little victories.
Little victories for sure. Hi.
Hi.
Is Stephanie home?
No, right now.
Okay. My name is Analise Ortiz. Soy la representante estatal de nuestra comunidad.
I think that is one of the bigger frustrations that I've heard, is the money that we work so hard for, regardless of our position. We know we pay our taxes, we know we have our roads, and we hope we have good schools. Where all I want as a taxpayer to have a good ROI. If you could give me results, if you could give me an education system that was rock solid from Paradise Valley to the poorest communities, I'd be okay. But because I don't get that and I get taxpayer dollars spent on digital ads, that's a frustration.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And when the roads aren't being repaired at a rate that you need, these are all things that people see every day. And as I said, it's one of the most common frustrations I hear is, why are our streets bad? Why do we not have speed bumps? Why do we not have speed cameras? Those are the kinds of things that people want, and that would help them to see how their tax dollars are being spent. And I think there's a huge disconnect when it comes to responsibly using taxpayer money. That's something I really want to change. Make a U-turn if you can here and go back down 55th that way.
I want to throw something your way. Because I have speed bumps in my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And it's Moon Valley, so it's a well-to-do, decent income neighborhood. It seems that when I go to 19th Ave, which is right near my house, it's a completely different scenario. It seems that the lights are a little bit slower, the stoplights. It seems that they don't have as much investment in the smart lights in the communities that don't have the dollars. And that, to me, seems imbalanced, I guess I would say.
Oh, it's absolutely imbalanced and it's discriminatory. There's no reason why our community here in Maryvale shouldn't have the same resources that an area like Moon Valley does.
Agree.
And people are really, really sick of that inequality. And that's why I take it really seriously to be such a loud voice for my community, not just at the legislature, but also showing up to city council meetings, consistently calling the city council people on behalf of my constituents. Those kinds of things I see as part of my duty.
Does it help?
I think it does. There was a neighborhood near my house on the other side of 75th that was trying to get speed bumps, and I was able to reach out to Betty Guidardo's office and organize a neighborhood meeting, and they're now in the process of getting their speed bumps. And sometimes it takes someone with a title to be able to elevate their concerns, and that's something I'm more than willing to do because they deserve that. And Betty Guidardo's office is incredible. They are so responsive to constituent services and needs. So those relationships are important to me.
How would you advocate for people that live in a neighborhood that may want something like a speed bump to get together and get to either your office or their representative or state senator's office or their city council office to be able to get the conversation going?
Be persistent. Elected officials are really busy. They should be responsive to you. But if they're not, keep trying. Organize your neighbors, because one voice is not as powerful as many voices working together. And if you have an elected official who's not responsive, go find them. At election time, I guarantee they're having coffee with the candidate, town halls, and show up and ask them. Tell them what your concerns are. They should be coming to you, but if they're not, don't forget that your elected official works for you.
For Representative Analise Ortiz, a vision of Arizona looks like
Fully funded public schools, people being able to afford housing and to become homeowners, people having good paying jobs and not having to work more than one job to make ends meet, people not having to be fearful of violence, people not having to be fearful of being evicted from their apartment. Those are just a few of the things that come to mind.
what would make some, if not all of that, possible?
I think we really need to flip the legislature. It feels so critical. We've seen so much damage happen to our state over the last few years being in Republican control, including our revenue situation we're in right now. School vouchers and the flat tax cuts for the rich have decimated our budget, and that budget deficit is going to get worse. And it terrifies me. I think that's something that not enough people are talking about. So one thing that absolutely needs to happen to make those things possible is to fix the revenue crisis that we're in, so that we have a steady state budget that will allow us to fund the priorities our communities deserve.
Is it tough because everything costs so much more to really nail down, say, an education budget? And then what I would like to do is dive a little bit deeper into the school vouchers. But let's go back to that initial part, because I went to Taco Bell the other day, and usually that was the affordable meal. I go back to my high school days in the 90s, it was like 49 cents a taco. Obviously, it's been a long time since the 90s, but it was $16 just for me.
Wow.
And I thought about the people you were talking about, Rep, about that have two jobs
Yeah.
just to get by, probably can't go to Taco Bell now.
Yeah.
So I imagine that price increase comes across in educational services, because maybe you have to pay teachers a little bit more, bus drivers a little bit more, support staff a little bit more so they can keep up, or supplies cost more. So how do you grapple with that in the legislature?
It's a serious issue. We're all dealing with the struggles of inflation right now, and I think it takes making smart investments and not being reckless with our taxpayer dollars, as well as finding a way that we can balance out this inflation and holding those corporations accountable who are exploiting this situation to price gouge, which is happening left and right, including in our housing market.
So the school voucher plan was designed to, on a limited basis, if I remember correctly, allow anyone to take their kids from the school that they're in and put them in a different school. Is that accurate?
Initially, it was intended for a very specific population of children, mainly children with special needs, to be able to go to a private school using, theoretically, the money that would be allocated to them in a public school. Now, the Republicans became the first in the country to expand this school voucher program to any family, regardless of status, income, you name it. Now, what we have seen happen is the majority of families using these school vouchers are people who could already afford private school. So essentially, it's become a coupon for the rich. We're talking $7,000 to $8,000 a year that's being taken out of our public school system and given to private or religious schools. We also are finding that parents are making purchases with this taxpayer money that they're calling educational, but is actually recreational, things like ski trips, driving lessons on luxury vehicles, Lego sets, an espresso machine, a piano.
So you're saying my tax dollars are paying for pianos and espresso machines?
Yes, in one family's house.
One family's house.
Yes. So we're gone are the days where you have a music classroom where 200 kids use a piano for 6 years as they're going through elementary school. No, that money for that piano is going to one family to have in their living room.
And when the bill was passed, the school voucher bill was expanded, rather, the idea was to take some kids that might be in a Maryvale school in an area where we just walked, to be able to get them out of a struggling school and be able to put them in a school that maybe isn't. Is that happening?
The money is going to private schools where kids were going to go to private schools anyway, but one of the important things to remember is that those struggling schools are struggling because policymakers have intentionally chosen not to fund our public schools. So their solution to all of this is to further deplete the public schools of resources, ultimately leading us to full privatization of our education system. These private schools, they're not accountable to the same curriculum, the testing that public school students have to go through. Their educators aren't even put through the same rigorous process of certification or even background checks. Now, I have talked to a few families here in Maryvale who use the private school vouchers for homeschooling because their child couldn't adapt to the public school for whatever reason. And I have had a few families say, it's working for me, but I don't think this should be expanded to every single family because then that decimates our public schools. So it's gotten out of control, and what is scary to me is that other states are kind of looking at Arizona thinking, well, they did it, we can do it too, without understanding how this has really, really hurt our state budget.
I'll give you a different example, because what it seems like to me is the government, federally and state, and who it helps, has shifted to middle and upper middle class. So downtown Phoenix, Margaret T. Hance Park, there is not just a single bike lane, there's a double bike lane. And I did some investigating, and the reason that bike lane came to be is because a person got hit by a car and died. And that's obviously tragic. So you see the response, and the tax money builds in. It's probably City of Phoenix money, so it doesn't quite illustrate the point. But you come closer to my neighborhood, there is I think it's a halfway house for teenagers. And there was a murder outside of it. But it was just, okay, it's a poor part of the city, and it was teenagers who were in a halfway house. It doesn't get the attention that the bike does. That, to me, is where it's all backwards, because the whole idea of being America is to uplift. And if the middle and upper middle class and upper class are getting most of the benefits in the bike lanes, that to me is that tragedy, because it then becomes harder to uplift so that everybody gets a chance to live whatever you want as the American dream.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Our budget is a reflection of our priorities. And when you're investing in neighborhoods that are wider or richer, you are saying through your state budget that our lower income communities of color are not as important. And that is wrong. And so many people here in Maryvale recognize that, and they see it every day when they can't get an answer from the city about why their pothole won't be filled or why we don't have safe bike lanes here in Maryvale. So that is something that I want to work to change. It's a bit harder on the state level because our budgets aren't as specific to region, right? We're dealing with state level taxes to fund critical state agencies like DHS and DCS. But it's something we can absolutely have the conversation on the city level, and that's why I'm someone that, again, engages with my city council people. I've attended the City of Phoenix's budget meetings and talked to my neighbors about why they should show up at those meetings too. And I think it's great that the City of Phoenix actually has those meetings to give people an opportunity to say, this is what I want my tax dollars spent on.
Question is, who listens, who doesn't?
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah. So are you, and now that your first term is wrapped up, are you happy with the progress that you and the legislature have made? Are you feeling optimistic about the next few years?
I'm feeling very optimistic and very grateful for this opportunity to be here. I'm not going to lie, it's hard to be optimistic some days.
You ain't lying.
It really is. The legislature can be a very toxic place. And sometimes you'll get a small win for your community and you always get hit with that, well, it's not good enough. Well, why didn't you do this or that? And that can be a little bit challenging, but I think for me, what I always do is put my ego aside, because this is not about me or what I'm able to get done as a person. It's about my entire community and what we can do together and how we're building a future together. So when I think about the things that give me optimism, it's the fact that the man I told you about earlier, Jose, is able to build a casita in his backyard. It's the fact that we were able to negotiate $15 million extra this year into the Housing Trust Fund that's going to go directly to low-income housing developments. It's the fact that we were able to expand healthy school meals so that children can go to school and not have to worry about paying for a school lunch. So those little wins keep me going. And when I'm able to communicate that to my constituents, it really means a lot. It's going to be a very interesting election year. We'll see if we gain control of the legislature. It will be challenging in new ways. But I'm very grateful for the opportunity to do this, and I hope to be elected in July so I can continue serving my community.
And speaking of this community, thank you for letting me tag along with you today and putting eyes on Maryvale instead of just what I hear about it, because I didn't get a sense of that toxic nature that the legislature has. And I think on that ground level, whatever political position we have, we don't want to be toxic. We want results, and we want people to live great lives as best we can.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what, it's those conversations every day with voters that is how I ground myself. And after a really toxic day at the legislature, to come back into the neighborhood and say, you know, this is why I do this, these are the people I work for, that's what makes it worth it.
Representative Analise Ortiz, now running for state senate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Beautiful sunset this evening in Phoenix as we wrap up our neighborhood canvassing in the Maryvale neighborhood of Phoenix on Campbell and 51st Avenue. A cloudy night, which we were lucky to have, but really eye-opening to see this neighborhood that I've never spent a whole lot of time in, and to meet some of the people that live here, because they, like you, have the same concerns. They want their neighborhood to be great. They want the country to be great. They want good policies in place. One gentleman that we saw was worried about his property taxes, because here, like so many other places, home values have gone up, which on paper sounds great, but if you're on a fixed income, like this gentleman was, he and his wife both retired, the property taxes went up with that home valuation going up, and now they have to cut back on their spending because of that. So these are all little consequences that happen that often don't get reported, don't get talked about, but are very much real despite the lack of coverage. And there's a universality into all of us, that we are all people, we all live in this country, regardless of where we come from, regardless of what our job is or what our political affiliation is. And that is one of those unique things about being an American, is that there are many different styles of being an American. And to me, being raised that America is a great country, is the idea is to offer the same opportunities to everyone all across the board, regardless of income level, regardless of race, religion, creed. And I'll tell you, the more I talk with people on an individual level and get further away from the politics, the more I understand the unique challenges, the more I understand what links us all together. Because I have mentioned many times here on Equal Matters that I feel very lucky to have been born when I was born and to be able to have pursued the life that I wanted to pursue. And I had that opportunity, and my hope is for everyone to have that opportunity, to be able to chase that thing that pulls you, that thing that you love. For me, it was radio, talk radio. Now this podcast, now my communication coaching, now being able to take this podcast to places like Maryvale to give a different view than you normally get. But that view, like the sunset behind me, is a view of optimism, a view of hopeful for the future, with some challenges ahead. But as Representative Analise Ortiz said today, it's best to work on them together, because if you dig down deep enough on the issues, there's a lot of commonality. And that's what we build off of. Thanks for being here on Equal Matters. Once again, my name is Rob Hunter. Once again, a thank you to Representative Analise Ortiz. This is the 4th time she's been on Equal Matters, and it's an enjoyable time every single time. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. If you haven't yet, write down my email address, rob@equalmatters.com. I'd love to know what you want to hear more about. I'd love to know what conversations you'd love to hear about. So send me an email. Again, rob@equalmatters.com. Until next time, cheers.